The forgotten arrival. The sky was full of dark clouds, heavy with rain. Lightning flashed across the alien refugee camp, turning every shadow into something even scarier. Inside the crowded camp, people rushed to save themselves from the coming storm. No one noticed the small alien girl sitting alone under a broken sheet of metal, her knees pressed tight to her chest. She did not move or speak. The cold wind cut through her thin clothes, making her shiver. Drops of rain started to fall, hitting her head, mixing with the tears on her cheeks. Her name was Mira, but nobody here cared to ask. Her blue skin made her stand out. The other aliens whispered about her. She was from a planet destroyed by war. Some said her family was gone. Some said she was sick or cursed. Others simply turned away, believing she would not survive the week. Everyone in the camp had lost someone. Nobody wanted more pain. So they pretended not to see Myra, left her with nothing but an old thin blanket and her fear. Some older kids passed by, looking at her with pity or maybe just curiosity, but none stopped to help. For them, she was already a ghost. As the rain grew heavier, the camp's makeshift shelters began to leak. People huddled together for warmth and comfort. From her lonely corner, Mira watched families share food, mothers hug their children, and fathers whisper promises of hope. She had no one to do that for her. Her stomach growled, but she had no food. She was too scared to ask, too tired to move. Suddenly, the silence broke. A group of guards marched past, shining their flashlights around. Mira pulled the blanket tighter, hoping they wouldn't see her. The guards were always strict, sometimes cruel. If they thought someone was weak or sick, they removed them from the camp. Mira had seen it happen before. That was why she tried to stay invisible, to shrink into the shadows. But someone did notice her, not the guards. A young human, taller than the rest, with short dark hair and tired eyes, stopped at the edge of the crowd. His name was Ryan. He was new to the camp, sent here to help the refugees. But the longer he stayed, the more helpless he felt. There was always too much pain, too many people needing help, and never enough food or medicine. Ryan had a simple rule: do what you can. Tonight, as he handed out blankets, he noticed the lonely figure under the broken metal roof. Something about the girl caught his attention, her silence, her shaking hands, the way her eyes stared at nothing. Ryan hesitated. Helping her would not be easy. If others saw him, they might get angry or jealous. Maybe the guards would say he was wasting resources. He tried to look away. He tried to tell himself she would be fine, but his feet wouldn't move. He watched as a cold breeze made her cough. Ryan's heart ached. In that moment, he remembered his own little sister back on Earth. She used to cry when she was scared. And he would always bring her something, a snack, a story, a hug. He thought about how lonely Mira must feel. Without thinking, Ryan stepped forward. The rain hit his face, but he didn't care. He walked slowly, careful not to scare her. When he got close, Myra shrank back, pulling the blanket higher to hide her face. Ryan crouched down, keeping his hands open to show he meant no harm. He spoke softly, using the simplest words he knew. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Mira did not answer. She only stared at him, wide-eyed. Ryan looked around, hoping no one was watching. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of bread. It wasn't much, but it was all he had left. He placed it on the ground, just within her reach, and stepped back. "Take it," Ryan said gently. "It's for you." Mira's eyes darted between the bread and Ryan's face. She hesitated, then slowly reached out with shaking fingers and grabbed the bread. She took the tiniest bite, as if she couldn't believe it was real. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time it was different. For the first time in days, someone had seen her. Someone had cared. Ryan stayed for a moment, watching her eat in silence. He wanted to say more, to promise her things would get better, but he knew words were not enough. So he just gave her a small, kind smile and turned to leave. As he walked away, the rain started to pour harder. Ryan looked back once and saw Mira still sitting under the broken roof. But now she was watching him too. In that moment, something changed. Mira was still alone, still scared, but she was not invisible anymore. Neither of them knew it yet, but tonight was the start of a new story. A story of hope in a place where hope was almost gone. And as the camp settled into uneasy sleep, two lives quietly became linked by a simple act of kindness. An unwanted burden the next morning arrived quietly. The sky still gray and heavy after a long, rainy night. Puddles covered the ground in the refugee camp, making every step slippery and cold. The air smelled of wet earth and old fear. Mira woke up to the soft sounds of voices and footsteps, her small body aching with hunger and cold. Her blanket was damp, sticking to her skin. But she didn't have the strength to move. She remembered the bread from last night. The taste still lingered in her mouth, taste of hope, or maybe just survival. For the first time in days, her stomach didn't hurt as much. But as she looked around, she realized she was still alone. All around her, the camp was waking up. People beginning their daily struggle for food, water, and a little bit of dignity. Nobody looked her way. Ryan had not slept well. He lay awake in his tiny tent, thinking about the blue-skinned girl alone in the mud. The memory of her shaking hands and empty eyes haunted him. He knew the rules helping one person meant others would want the same. He could get in trouble with the camp officials. But his heart wouldn't let him ignore her. As the sun tried to break through the clouds, Ryan made up his mind. He slipped out of his tent, grabbed a piece of stale bread and half an apple from his ration, and walked back toward Myra's spot. Along the way, he passed groups of refugees standing together, whispering about the camp's problems, about food shortages, sickness, and the growing tension with the guards. Some noticed him and frowned, guessing where he was going. But Ryan ignored them. When Mira saw Ryan approaching, she pulled her blanket tighter and looked away, scared he would take back what he'd given her. But Ryan sat beside her on the cold, wet ground. He placed the bread and apple between them, not too close, not too far. For a long moment, they sat in silence. The world seemed to forget about them, even as voices in the camp grew louder. Finally, Ryan spoke, his voice gentle. "My name is Ryan. What's yours?" Mira said nothing. She stared at the food, her hands trembling. Then, in a voice so quiet, it was almost lost in the wind, she whispered, "Mira." Ryan smiled. "Hello, Mira. You're safe now. I won't let anyone hurt you." For the first time, Mira looked directly at him. Her eyes were dark, deep with sadness, but also a tiny spark of hope. She slowly reached for the bread, her movements cautious, as if she expected someone to yell at her any moment. When nothing happened, she took a small bite and then another. More confident now, people nearby noticed Ryan sitting with Mira. Two older women whispered, shaking their heads. A teenage boy stared, then called out, "Ryan, why waste your food? She's not worth it." Ryan ignored the comment, but Myra's face fell. She pulled away, ashamed. Ryan shook his head. "Don't listen to them. You matter, Mira. I can see you're strong, even if they can't." Later, as the camp's guards walked by on patrol, one of them stopped and pointed at Mira. "That girl, she's been here too long. She's sick. She should go to quarantine." Ryan stood up and faced the guard. "She's not sick. She's just hungry. I'll watch over her." The guard frowned. "If she causes trouble, you'll both be thrown out. Understand?" Ryan nodded, but inside he felt a wave of fear. Helping Mira could cost him everything: his spot in the camp, his food, even his safety. But when he looked down at Mira, shivering and afraid, he knew he couldn't leave her. As night fell, Ryan found an empty crate and carried it to Mira's spot, making a small seat for her. He shared his blanket and told her stories of Earth, stories of warm houses, laughing children, and families that never left anyone behind. Mira listened quietly, sometimes closing her eyes to imagine what those places might look like. But the peace didn't last. Later that night, some refugees began to argue nearby. Someone blamed Myra for taking food that wasn't hers. Another warned Ryan, "She'll get you in trouble. Leave her before it's too late." But Ryan refused. He sat beside Mira, watching the stars appear between clouds. He felt like everyone in the camp was watching them, waiting for him to fail. Before they slept, Ryan gently asked Mira, "Do you have any family?" Mira shook her head. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "They're gone," she whispered. Ryan put his hand over hers, careful and kind. "Then you have me now. We'll get through this together." That night, Mira fell asleep for the first time without fear. Ryan stayed awake, listening to the sounds of the camp and the quiet breathing of the girl everyone else had given up on. He knew tomorrow would be harder, but he was ready. He had become her only hope. The struggle for survival days passed, each one harder than the last. Rainwater pooled around the camp, turning the ground into mud. The air always felt damp, heavy, and hopeless. Most refugees stayed close to their own groups, sharing what little they had. Mira and Ryan, alone together, became a familiar sight at the edge of the tents. Sitting quietly as the world moved around them, Ryan tried his best to care for Mira. Every morning, he would leave early, searching for food or anything useful. Sometimes he managed to trade an old shirt for a few pieces of stale bread. Other times, he went hungry so Myra could eat. Ryan's shoes grew thin, his jacket lost buttons, and his body grew tired, but he never stopped. Myra slowly began to trust him. She watched the way he protected her from cruel words and guarded her tiny space in the camp. Some nights, Ryan told her stories of Earth's blue sky and green grass. Myra would listen, her eyes closed as if she could see it all. In her mind, and she felt safe, she tried to speak a little more. She shared broken memories of her home, a planet with silver rivers, tall shining trees, and her mother's gentle voice singing lullabies at night. But survival was never easy. Food was running out across the camp. Tempers grew short, and some people blamed Myra, saying she was a burden. "Why does she get food? Why does Ryan help her?" they whispered. Ryan ignored them, but their voices followed him everywhere. Sometimes, when he returned from searching, he found their few belongings scattered, kicked around by angry hands. One cold evening, Myra woke coughing. She couldn't stop. Her body shook with fever, and her breath sounded harsh, like broken glass. Ryan felt panic rise inside him. He touched Mira's forehead and felt the burning heat of sickness. He had seen it before, how fast it could spread in the camp, how quickly the guards would throw out anyone they thought was sick. Ryan knew he needed medicine, but there was no clinic, no doctor, and he had nothing left to trade. He went from tent to tent, begging quietly. Some people closed their doors. Others asked for more than Ryan could give. The oldest woman in the camp, known as Mother Solra, watched him. She had wise eyes and a face lined with years. Finally, she called him over. "You care for the blue girl?" she asked, voice thin and cracked. Ryan nodded, desperate. "She's sick. Please do you know how to help her?" Mother Solra shook her head sadly. "I have little left. But maybe, if you trust, I can try." She handed him a bundle of dried roots and a small cup of water. "Boil these, make her drink, then pray." Ryan took the roots and ran back. In their little corner, he built a tiny fire from scraps and boiled the water as best he could. Myra was so weak she could barely open her eyes. He whispered to her gently, begging her to drink. The taste was bitter, but she trusted Ryan, and she drank as the night grew colder. Ryan wrapped Myra in both their blankets. He told her a story about a human child who survived a storm by holding on to hope. He talked until his own eyes closed. From exhaustion the next day, Myra's fever had not broken. Her skin was clammy and her breathing still rough. Ryan grew more desperate. He tried to find more food, but others pushed him away. "Feed your own," they shouted. He begged the guards for help. One shrugged, "She's not our problem." Another warned, "If she dies, you'll both be thrown out." Ryan refused to give up. Every night, he stayed by Myra's side, cooling her forehead with a wet cloth, praying for her to get better. Sometimes she would open her eyes and look at him, and in those moments, he saw both pain and trust. He promised her, "I won't leave you. I'll do anything." On the third night, Myra began to mumble in her sleep. Her dreams were filled with shadows and cold winds. She whispered for her mother for help, for someone not to leave her behind. Ryan listened and felt his own heart break. He remembered losing his father when he was young, the same kind of helpless pain. He held Myra's hand all night, whispering back, "You're not alone anymore." When dawn broke, the fever finally eased. Myra woke, weak but alive. She looked at Ryan and managed a tiny smile, a real one. It was a fragile thing, but it made all the hard days worth it. Ryan felt hope rise inside him, stronger than before. But even as Myra grew stronger, trouble was not far away. Food was still low, people were still angry, and the guards watched them both with cold eyes. Myra and Ryan knew they had survived one battle, but many more waited in the shadows. Together, though, they faced the world not as strangers, but as the only family they had left. Asterisk hope in the shadows of Myra's fever was finally gone. But she was left weak and pale, barely able to stand. Still, Ryan smiled every time he looked at her. He knew she had survived something many thought was impossible. He carried her outside their small, broken shelter to let her feel the morning sun. Myra blinked against the brightness, unused to anything but darkness and cold. For a moment, she forgot the pain, and a small bit of color returned to her cheeks. But peace in the camp never lasted. Word had spread quickly that Ryan had gone begging for help, asking for roots and herbs. Some people whispered that he was selfish, stealing what little others had left. Some blamed Myra, calling her a curse that would bring sickness to everyone. Children ran by, making cruel jokes. Myra kept her eyes down and clung to Ryan's arm, wishing she could disappear. That afternoon, the camp's guards arrived at their corner. 3 men in old uniforms, faces hard and eyes empty, stood over them. The leader, a thick-set man with a faded scar on his chin, pointed at Myra. "She was sick," he growled. "Off. If you bring sickness here, both of you will be thrown out. The camp can't care for the weak." Ryan stood up, standing between Myra and the guards. He spoke as bravely as he could, though his hands were shaking. "She's not sick anymore. She just needs food and time. She's no danger to anyone." The guard stepped closer, towering over Ryan. "You're not in charge here, human. If she makes trouble, you both go." Then he spat on the ground and led his men away. Myra tried not to show fear, but her body was trembling. Ryan put his hand gently on her shoulder. "Don't listen to them. I promised you I'll protect you," he said softly, as the sun went down. Ryan went out searching for food. It was harder now. Almost everyone in the camp saw him as a troublemaker. Some even turned their backs when he approached. But Ryan refused to give up. He waited until most people were asleep, then quietly made his way toward the camp's kitchen tent. The kitchen was guarded, but Ryan knew from watching that the guards sometimes wandered off at night. He waited in the shadows, heart pounding, hoping for a chance. When one of the guards walked away, Ryan hurried forward, silent and quick. Inside the kitchen, he found a few crusts of bread and a shriveled fruit. He stuffed them into his shirt and slipped away, holding his breath as he moved back into the darkness. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Who's there?" A flashlight beam swept the ground, just missing Ryan's feet. He froze, not daring to move. The guard grumbled and kept walking. Only when the sound faded did Ryan dare to run. He didn't stop until he reached Mira, out of breath, but smiling. He handed her the food. "Here, eat. It's not much, but it's something." Mira smiled weakly, taking tiny bites. She never complained, never asked for more. She only looked at Ryan as if he had brought her the richest feast in the galaxy. But as Mira ate, Ryan knew things could not go on like this. Someone would notice food was missing. People would guess it was him. They were already angry enough. Later that night, an old woman from the camp approached their shelter. She was hunched over, her hair silver and tangled. She carried a small bag of dried leaves and herbs. "I saw what you did for the girl," she whispered. "This will help her get stronger. But be careful. There is always a price for kindness." Ryan accepted the gift, thanking her. He made a tea for Myra, watching as she drank it slowly, eyes growing heavy with sleep. That night, as Ryan sat awake, he thought about everything he had risked. If he was caught, they could both be thrown out into the wild night. If he stopped, helping Mira would surely fade away again. But for the first time, he saw hope in Mira's eyes. Even as shadows crept around their little shelter, hope shone like a tiny star between them. The next morning, angry voices spread through the camp. "Who's stealing food?" Someone shouted, "It's that human. It's that blue-skinned girl." The guards came searching, their boots thumping in the mud. Ryan pressed Mira's hand and whispered, "Don't worry. I won't let them take you." As the guards reached their corner, Mira hid behind Ryan. The guards turned over crates, searched their few belongings, and glared at Ryan. "We know it's you." "There's no place for thieves here," the leader said. Ryan didn't look away. "If helping someone survive is stealing, then I am guilty." The guards hesitated. For a moment, it seemed they would throw them out. But then the old woman appeared. At the edge of the crowd, they did nothing wrong. "Sometimes the weakest need the most help," she said loudly. The crowd murmured. Some people nodded, others scowled. The guards finally left, but they left a warning behind one more mistake, and both Ryan and Mira would be gone. That night, as Mira drifted off to sleep, Ryan promised her, "No matter what happens, I will never give up on you." But in his heart, he wondered how much longer could they survive in the shadows, with hope as their only shield. The breaking point nights in the camp grew colder, and fear was everywhere. Ryan barely slept. Each time he closed his eyes, he dreamed of heavy boots, angry shouts, and being dragged away from the only shelter he and Mira had left. Mira, too, was restless. She often woke up shaking, her thin blanket not enough to warm her small body. Yet, even as hunger gnawed at her, she clung to hope that Ryan's kindness would somehow save them both. The camp was changing. Rumors swirled that the guards were planning a new round of evictions. Anyone caught stealing, anyone seen as weak or sick, would be sent out beyond the fences, left to survive in the wild, dangerous forest. Ryan listened carefully to the whispers, his worry growing heavier every day. Food had become almost impossible to find. The guards watched the kitchen even at night now. Ryan's last attempt to sneak bread nearly ended in disaster. A guard's shadow passed so close that Ryan could feel his breath on the back of his neck. He barely escaped, and since then, he dared not try again. With their food nearly gone, Ryan decided he had to try something different. He waited until sunrise, when the camp was just waking up. He approached a group of older women sitting by a fire, offering the only thing he had left, a battered watch from his past life on Earth. "I need food for the girl," he pleaded. "She is not well, please." One woman shook her head, looking away. Another muttered, "Why do you help her? She will only bring you pain." But one woman, with a lined face and gentle eyes, took the watch from Ryan's hand and handed him a small piece of hard cheese and a bruised fruit. "Kindness must be repaid," she said quietly. Ryan thanked her and hurried back to Mira. He broke the cheese and fruit into small pieces, feeding her bit by bit. Mira's eyes brightened, and for a moment she smiled, the shadow of hunger lifting from her face. But peace was never easy to keep. That night, as darkness fell, angry voices rose outside their shelter. The guards stormed through the camp, searching every corner. Someone had told them food was missing again, and now they were looking for a thief. Ryan felt panic. He told Mira to hide in the smallest space at the back of their broken hut, behind a loose board. He covered her with an old blanket and whispered, "No matter what happens, stay quiet. Don't move." The guards reached their shelter, boots thumping in the mud. One guard shoved Ryan aside, searching their tiny space. "Where is the food?" he demanded. Ryan stood tall, trying not to show fear. "We have nothing but a little bread left," he answered, showing his empty hands. Another guard knocked over their crate, sending what few possessions they had spilling onto the floor. When he found nothing, he cursed and turned on Ryan. "If we find out you're lying, you'll both be out in the cold tonight." They left, leaving chaos behind. Mira crawled out, eyes wide and frightened. Ryan hugged her close, feeling the tremble in her body. "Why do they hate us?" Mira whispered. Ryan stroked her hair, gentle and patient. "People fear what they don't understand," he said. "But that's not your fault." That night, Myra reached into the small pouch she carried, a single treasure from her lost world. She pulled out a tiny, blue crystal shaped like a teardrop, hanging from a silver chain. "My mother gave this to me," she said softly. "It's for luck." She said, "When you're alone, hold it tight. It will remind you someone loves you, even if they are far away." Mira pressed the charm into Ryan's hand. "You have given me hope, Ryan. Please take my luck. Maybe it will keep you safe, too." Ryan was silent for a moment, overwhelmed by the gesture. He tied the chain around his wrist, holding Mira's small hand in his. "Thank you, Mira. I promise. As long as I have this, I'll keep you safe. I won't let anything happen to you." But even as he spoke, he could hear angry shouts in the distance. Someone else in the camp had been caught stealing food. Guards dragged a young man away. Ignoring his cries, everyone watched, silent and afraid. Ryan knew they were running out of time. The guards' patience was thin. The other refugees saw him and Mira as outsiders now, a problem that could get everyone in trouble. He made a decision, one that would change everything. That night, as Mira slept, Ryan sat awake. He studied the fences, watched the guards' movements, and searched for a weakness. He knew it was risky, but staying meant certain death for both of them. If he could escape the camp with Mira, maybe they could find a new home, somewhere no one would judge them for being different. As dawn crept over the horizon, Ryan whispered to Mira, "Get ready. Tonight, we're leaving this place. I won't let them hurt you, not ever." Mira looked at him with wide, hopeful eyes, and for the first time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, there was a world outside these fences where she could truly belong. Escape under the stars. Ryan didn't sleep at all the night before. Their escape. He watched the moon climb slowly across the sky, silver light washing over the camp's muddy ground. Myra lay beside him, clutching her blanket and the crystal charm, breathing quietly but not truly resting. They both knew. Tonight was their last chance. The camp felt different after midnight, quieter, but full of hidden danger. The guards' flashlights sliced through the dark, sweeping back and forth, searching for anything out of place. Now and then, a cough or a whispered argument drifted through the air. Somewhere, a baby cried. But all Ryan could hear was his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He whispered his plan to Mira, pointing to the far edge of the camp. "We'll wait until." The guards passed the kitchen, then slipped behind the tool shed. "There's a broken part in the back fence. I saw it days ago, but it's small. You'll have to crawl first. I'll follow and cover the hole." Mira nodded, her eyes wide but trusting. She wrapped the chain with her mother's crystal around her wrist, hiding it under her sleeve. She wore Ryan's old jacket, the sleeves rolled up, and a scarf tied around her head to cover her blue skin as much as possible. If they were caught, both would be thrown out, or worse. Ryan squeezed her hand. "Stay close. Don't look back." They waited, holding their breath as the guards made their rounds. The minutes crawled by. Ryan counted every step, every flash of light. At last, the guards stopped by the main gate, talking in low voices. Now was their chance. Ryan led Mira through the shadows, his movements careful and silent. They kept to the edge of tents, using piles of crates and laundry lines for cover. Mira slipped once, her foot landing in a puddle with a soft splash. Ryan froze, heart thumping, but the guards didn't hear. He helped Myra up, and they kept going, slower now. Finally, they reached the tool shed. Ryan paused, listening for any sign of movement. All was still. He gently pushed Mira forward, and together they crept behind the shed to the old fence. It was made of metal wire, twisted and rusted. At the bottom, a hole just big enough for a child to squeeze through. "Go," Ryan whispered. Mira dropped to her knees and crawled forward. The wire scratched her arm, but she didn't cry out. She slid through, pulling herself into the tall grass outside the camp. Ryan followed, pushing his way under the fence. The wire tore his sleeve and left a shallow cut on his arm, but he barely felt it. They made it out, breathless and trembling. Ryan turned to look back. Still moved in the camp, but no alarm had been raised. Not yet. He gently took Mira's hand, and together they ran, half-bent, through the grass and into the trees beyond the camp. The forest was dark and thick, filled with unfamiliar sounds. Branches grabbed at their clothes, and thorns scratched their skin. Mira stumbled, her legs weak from hunger and sickness. Ryan picked her up, carrying her for a while, whispering words of encouragement. Behind them, a distant shout broke the synced night. Someone had discovered the hole in the fence. Flashlights swung wildly, voices barking orders. Dogs began to bark, and Ryan's heart jumped into his throat. "We have to move faster," he told Myra. "Hold on tight." They pushed deeper into the forest, following a narrow path Ryan had noticed before, a trail almost invisible in the daylight. Hidden under leaves and roots, they ducked under branches and splashed through a shallow stream. Ryan's arms ached, but he refused to stop. The sounds of the camp faded behind them. Only the wind and the songs of night insects surrounded them now. For the first time, Mira dared to look up at the sky. Stars filled the darkness, bright and endless, stretching farther than she'd ever imagined. "Do you think we're safe?" Mira whispered. Ryan listened for shouts, for barking dogs, but only silence answered. He nodded, forcing a smile. "For now, yes. We just need to keep moving until morning." They found a hollow under the roots of a giant tree and crawled inside. Ryan wrapped Mira in his jacket and sat beside her, pulling the torn fence wire tight behind them to make it harder for anyone to follow. Mira leaned against him, eyes heavy with exhaustion. She looked at the stars through a gap in the leaves. "My mother used to say the stars watched over lost children," she murmured, her voice soft. Ryan smiled. "Maybe they're watching us now, making sure we find our way." For the first time, Mira felt something close to hope, warm, quiet, feeling in her chest like the promise of a new life. She closed her eyes, listening to the forest's gentle sounds, and let herself believe. Ryan kept watch as long as he could, his eyes searching the shadows for danger. He knew their journey was far from over, but tonight they were free. Together, under the stars with the world stretching out ahead, anything seemed possible. A new beginning when Myra woke. Sunlight danced through the leaves above her. The air smelled fresh and cool, so different from the heavy, damp stink of the camp. For a moment, she felt weightless, as if the past weeks had been only a dream. She heard birds singing, and her heart fluttered with hope. Ryan was already awake, keeping watch from the edge of their shelter under the roots. His face was tired, but his eyes were bright. He smiled when he saw Mira sit up. "How do you feel?" he asked gently. Myra stretched, surprised by the strength in her arms and legs. "Better," she whispered, as if afraid to break the magic of the moment. Ryan shared their last piece of fruit and some wild berries he had picked at dawn. They ate slowly, savoring every bite. Myra smiled between mouthfuls, her eyes wide as she watched squirrels jump between branches and sunlight dance on the forest floor. "I never thought I would see something so beautiful again," she said. Ryan nodded. "This is only the beginning, Mira. There's a whole world waiting for you out here." But as peaceful as the morning was, Ryan knew they could not stay hidden forever. The camp was not far behind, and the guards might still search for them. He thought about where they could go, how to find safety, food, and a place to call home. Above all, he knew he could not let Mira down. Not now. After breakfast, they started walking. Ryan led the way, checking for paths through the thick woods. Sometimes they followed animal tracks. Sometimes they just trusted their instincts. Liam grew tired, but she never complained. Each step away from the camp made her braver. By midday, they reached the edge of the forest. Ahead lay wide, grassy hills, and, in the distance, the shimmer of a river. Smoke curled into the sky from far away. Human settlement, perhaps. Hope surged in Ryan's chest. "If we reach the river, maybe we'll find help," he said. Mira's hand tightened in his. "As long as we're together, I'm not afraid." They traveled all afternoon, careful and quiet. When they finally reached the riverbank, they crouched in the tall grass and watched the distant village. Ryan saw small houses, people working in gardens, and children laughing near the water. For a moment, he felt a pang of longing. Was it safe to trust strangers again? Just as he was about to lead Mira across, a shout rang out behind them. Ryan spun around, heart pounding. 3 men in uniforms, rescue workers, not guards, emerged from the trees, holding radios and first aid kits. "Are you from the camp?" one called, his voice gentle. Ryan nodded, shielding Mira. "We had to leave. She was sick, and they wouldn't help us. We didn't steal. The men held up their hands in peace. "You're safe now. We're looking for anyone who escaped." "You both need help," the leader said. Myra trembled, pressing close to Ryan. But the men smiled kindly and offered her a blanket. One examined her and handed Ryan a bottle of clean water. Ryan hesitated. For so long, kindness had always come with a price. He glanced at Mira, searching her face for trust. Mira looked at the rescue workers, then back at Ryan. Her eyes were tired but brave. "It's okay," she whispered. "Maybe this time will be different." The rescue workers led them to the village, where people welcomed them with warm soup and soft beds. Doctors checked Mira's health and gave her new clothes. Ryan was given a job helping in the gardens, and soon, he found himself smiling for the first time in what felt like years. As days passed, Myra grew stronger. She ran in the fields, played with other children, and began to laugh again, a sound as bright as the morning sun. Every evening, she wore the crystal charm from her mother and told stories of silver rivers and tall trees to anyone who would listen. Ryan watched her, pride and relief filling his heart. He had kept his promise. Against every odd, he had saved her, and together they had found a new family. One night, as the stars sparkled above, Mira sat beside Ryan and looked up at the sky. "Do you think they remember us at the camp?" she asked quietly. Ryan shook his head. "Some might. But what matters is that you never gave up. Mira, and I never will, either." Mira took his hand, her fingers warm and strong. "You were my only hope, Ryan. Thank you for not giving up." As the village lights twinkled behind them and the river flowed gently by, Mira and Ryan knew they were finally safe. The world had given up on Mira, but Ryan never did done because of that. She had a new life, a new home, and a future full of hope. And somewhere, out under the stars, maybe someone else in the dark would hear their story and remember, no one is truly alone. As long as there is hope and someone willing to fight for it.